Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Conn'Cast Podcast. I am your host Finn Tumber as always, and today I am filming the introduction to Nick's part 2 of our conversation because I forgot to do it when we originally recorded, which is a bit silly of me, but here I am recording it quickly. So in the first part, me and Nick discussed mental health in quite a lot of detail, especially his mental health. We first spoke a bit about Connor, my brother, obviously. Nick being a long-term friend of his, a childhood friend, all the way through to his passing. We spoke about that a little bit, and then we also went into a timeline of Nick's mental health journey, starting and before, but mainly starting from when Nick unfortunately lost his sister Kaylee back in January 2018, and the events that preceded that, how Nick dealt with his mental health and still is, and any coping mechanisms that helped him, and hopefully that will inspire you guys. But without further ado, that's enough of me yapping. We'll cut straight to the episode.
And I feel like it was partly what we were going through as well, like the fact that, you know, I'm going along this timeline now that we still didn't have closure. So in 2018, the start of 2018, you know, we found out that she'd passed away at this time, and I think we had our first inquest that year or the year after. I can't remember. So the inquest was split in two as well.
Oh god.
But I remember all of 2018 was us trying to process what had happened. You know, birthdays now become difficult. You know, you're grieving on their birthday. Then Christmas came around. It made me look at life different and process my own emotions differently as well. I was in such a mindset that I didn't want to become attached to anything out of the fear of losing it. So I was scared of losing everyone at this point. You know, I was so scared of someone else doing the same thing.
Wow.
Exactly that was my biggest fear, was just losing someone else that, you know,
and going through it
friendship
twice.
Because, you know, I just had two scenarios happen, you know, back to back, and I thought it really set the fear into my mind that, you know, I can't lose anyone else. And I found myself becoming detached from people over that aspect. Because I was scared to become attached in case I lost it and I had to go through this again. So then Christmas came around. That was difficult, and
Christmas
then
thing, doesn't it?
and then we were into 2019, and as I previously mentioned, we got like halfway through the year, and I discovered that you know, my childhood best friend had taken his life.
My brother, you know,
Connor, that's when it really started to hit home.
Did that really, when that happened, you were like, oh, okay, now this is the third thing?
So that's like, it was because it was my fear. And it's such up to this point, like it'd be my fear, and I was like, no, why is this still happening?
Why? Please stop.
And it wasn't. And at that time, like, I had kind of tried to work on my coping mechanisms of, you know, deal with the grief separate to why this has happened and stuff like that. But when I started grieving for your brother, it brought back every kind of emotion that I tried to shut off. So I'd kind of like barricaded all of the real big heartbreak because I was still trying to like pick it in pieces with my sister.
And you mentioned as well, about the emotions of like how you're very affected by other people's emotions. I think you mentioned to me earlier about how you kind of felt for us as well as well as family. So that also didn't help.
That was at the forefront of my mind because you know, for me, like when I went through what I did with my sister, like, I saw what it done to my family, and then I thought, you know, I was lucky just to have those kind of 2 weeks to process myself. But you know, like the effect it's had on my family hasn't stopped.
No,
I don't think it ever will. But my first thought when I'd found out about Connor was, you know, your family. I thought, this is so awful that I've now got to see another family go through what my family are going through. And, you know, like people will grieve different ways and stuff like that. But, you know, you never wish it on anyone to have to go through those emotions.
Ever. It's like the pain being passed on. It's like a ripple effect for everyone. And not just the family, but the close friends. I know you said it, you're looking out for us, but obviously that affected you massively. And I know it without saying. And everyone, all of Connor's old school friends as well. It's just a massive ripple effect. And it's like, I'm the same as you. I cannot ever see that happen again. I'm scared of it as well.
And it was one of my first concerns at that time as well, because I had to tell, someone I was still really close with, who was best friends with Connor.
And that
I had to speak to him about the situation, but I was really worried about his mental health, and I thought, I don't want to go through this again off the back of this happening. All of these fears start flooding in.
It's like you worried about like a domino effect happening with like triggering someone and
And I'd seen it happen before, and I feel like it had a slight effect on my sister, because one of her best friends had committed suicide just before that she'd done it. So I was worried it was going to be the same thing, and it really kind of brought fear into my mind, and I was like, I really don't want to lose anyone.
No. 100%.
And I think by this I'm still trying to piece it back together, because I think I'd shut it off for quite a while. But I think by this point I was having counselling as well.
Yes,
I had that from my doctor this time round.
That's good. That managed to get you through that.
I remember like at first I had all these emotions that I didn't understand as well. I was signed off, and I was just trying to live a life, and I had this overwhelming feeling of like fear, like anxiety, but you didn't know what you're scared of. Like it felt like someone was following you, or
that sort of thing.
Just really tense, like something doesn't feel like a spider sense almost. You're not.
Yeah, because it's not. It's almost like it's not irrational. I don't want to say that, but because you don't know what it is. Yeah, you just got this feeling.
So,
interesting.
Yeah, I had that constantly after that, and I was prescribed propanol for that to reduce that emotion. But I'd always suffered from things like chest pain since I was 16, 15.
Right, okay.
And for me, that was a big one, like feeling that I can't breathe. And it was absolute agony. When that first happened to me, I was put in an ambulance.
Because it's just...
Because they think, well, this is going to be really bad, and you rush to hospital.
And that makes it even worse because of that. You're like, oh my God, I'm in an ambulance. But
so... But it take me that amount of time for my doctor to then prescribe me something that would actually help. Because
help with that.
Back then it was just painkillers. That's all I was given. I think it was an anti-inflammatory.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was actually. I think it was just a strong painkiller.
Yeah.
But it was only up until that point where they gave me propanol. Yeah. And I started going to therapy, and it was
was this around the sort of time Connor passed, would you say? Or
it was around the time that Connor passed, going to therapy. Yeah. And it did help to an extent. But it kind of opened my eyes to the fact that I'm not saying this is like every therapist. I'm sure different types of therapy are very different. I did have the option for CBT, and I didn't really know what it was, so I didn't go for it. And they very much kind of categorize therapy, I feel, at the moment. So I went down the grieving path, and I felt like it was a very numbers exercise in my situation, and it was kind of like how you feeling today, like what you typically see in a movie or something. And it was a one-on-one person, and I know there were note taking, but the notes never added up the next session and stuff like that.
Right.
But what they did help me with was not necessarily understanding my situation, but was like the coping mechanisms and how to process it. I remember at the time finding them really helpful, but I can't remember half of them now.
No, you don't. But they got you through that time.
Yeah, but I remember one of them being, nothing's permanent.
That's a really big one.
Your mindset is not permanent. How you feel right now, this isn't permanent. Like, don't start feeling that you're trapped in this situation.
Such a good point.
You're not always going to feel this low.
Yeah.
It's going to be what you can make it.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the other ones that they gave me was one that you previously mentioned, was the whole grief being small,
and then you grow around it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if you listened to the whole episode, because that was a long episode.
I think you've mentioned it on 2 episodes.
I can't stop.
Not that I really follow them or anything.
That was my best mate, one of my really good mates that said that to me.
Yeah.
Hit the mic. Yeah. But yeah, here's what said that to me, and you kind of relate with that.
Yeah, and they said, like, imagine your grief, this really intense scribble.
Yeah.
And you're this close bubble around it. Your grief's not getting smaller. You're growing around it.
Is that what the therapist said
as well? Yeah, that's what the actual therapist said. You're
Wow.
growing around it. The grief is exactly the same size. It's never going to change. It's exactly the same.
My mate's a therapist.
Yeah.
He had the same
But they
thing.
said you're going to grow around it, and it's
Yeah.
it might feel smaller, but it's not. You've just processed it.
Does that alleviate the fear in it as well of like the whole idea of grieving and going down this like a rabbit hole, or did that help you at all in that sense?
It did then, and it made me realise that like our experiences in life, they shape us for who we are.
Yeah.
And I found at that time going through that therapy and understanding Connor was, I think that different people have different thresholds depending on what they've experienced in life.
Yeah.
So someone maxing out on how much they can cope with is going to be different to the next person who's had so much more.
100%.
Like you never wish that someone's gone through so much bad that they're up here.
Yeah.
But their coping mechanism, is so much greater.
Yeah.
But I find that is like when you go through so much and you see someone get so stressed over something so little.
Yes. Yeah.
You think, like it's because, I'd hate for that person to ever go through, something that makes
them go over the limit, sort of thing.
Yeah. Like, I'd love to be back to where that little thing did bother me.
It's all up perspective as well with like how people feel.
Yeah.
Because again, talking about Connor, I remember my mum saying like, I don't know why Connor did this because like other people maybe in his life or other people in general may have had, I don't know, it shouldn't mean it this way, but other people have other problems that people might class as being worse, but it's
not about being worse.
It's not.
It's about where your threshold is.
Exactly that. And Mum, I was paraphrasing you. That's not what you meant. I know because that was not what she meant at all. She did not mean that. But I did.
But that's what I think it is with
threshold.
I think it's different people have different thresholds.
Yeah.
And people are gonna, if it is something small, that could be
a really big thing to them.
A really big thing for them. And it's only, with life and their perspectives, how that's going to change and how they're going to grow and stuff like that. But
another thing I want to say, sorry to cut you full flow,
that's all right.
It's like when something big happens, say something really irked you today, really made you upset.
Yeah.
It's really big today. And like you said, it links to how nothing's permanent, that as time goes, maybe that thing that really annoyed you today, you'll forget in a week, or it's not as big of an issue. And it links back to what you said about growing things around it with grief. You kind of learn to bring more stuff into your life, and you start to, I don't think it ever gets easier, but you learn to
live with it.
Yeah, living with it's the right way to word it.
Yeah, I think it is definitely living with it.
Yeah, you're spot on.
But like, I feel like I'm going backwards on the timeline now. But,
we're in a massive rabbit hole here, but I like it.
I'm just...
There's no timestamps on YouTube for this.
No, not at all.
On me, mainly.
Like going back to Mexico.
Yes.
And my whole perspective and stuff, like, I've always been very into photography and stuff like that. And I remember having my camera gear on me when I came off the plane, and it was kind of, this was like my perspective on, because I loved photography at the time.
Yeah.
But my perspective and thoughts and feelings had really changed at this point. And I came off this plane, and there was this is in Mexico, and came down this escalator. And at the bottom of the escalator was like a queue that snaked around to immigration.
Yeah.
To get into the country.
Oh, God.
And I remember being further around this queue, and I was thinking, this queue's not very well laid out, because it's literally the back of the queue is this escalator that ends at the bottom, and you're literally people... Anyway,
you can't really get around them.
I'm stood there. Next thing I hear is all this screaming and shouting and like something out of a horror movie, like proper... screams
like
to their life.
Screaming, you think
and I think, what is going on? And all I can see through two like panels of glass, there's all these bodies piling at the bottom of this escalator. So I've got all of this stuff on me that I'm carrying. I love my photography, and I've just thrown it all. Don't know where I threw it. Just let go of everything that I had and just ran over there and started pulling bodies out. Because that's the first thing I could think of was, I can't believe this is happening.
That's mental.
And obviously it's going to happen to me.
I can't believe that.
And I felt so awful, because a lot of these people, they were, 70, 80. They were a lot of these people quite fragile.
They can't, a couple of bodies.
And this escalator had no kill switch, not the one that we could find for a little while anyway. So I'm trying to pull these bodies out.
And there's more coming.
Yeah, there's still... And I'm shouting, you need to stop. Like, other people are now joining in at this point.
That's crazy.
To hop on.
Yeah.
I'm saying, you need to find the kill switch, and we can't find this kill button. Yeah. Turned out it was on the inside of the escalator. and then when you let go after 5 seconds, it starts up again.
Oh no! So like you're holding the switch.
I've managed to find someone else to find that, and I'm like hold it down, and I've got someone else. I'm now pulling people out.
Yeah.
Anyway, I remember the situation then ending, and I've come back down because that was my first thought was I need to help these people, and the family I was with at the time were like, I can't believe you just done that. And I was like, what? They were like, you just threw everything that you've got to help, this situation. And it was kind of like my perspective, because I think if I hadn't have been through what I'd just been through, I would have been a lot more delicate with how I dealt with it. But I cared very little for what I had at the time, because I thought this doesn't matter.
That's so interesting. It said almost like you said literally like 5-10 minutes ago about how like these events, as much as you wish it didn't happen, it's helped you, which is quite a nice silver lining in a way.
It just kind of changed how I responded.
You responded to things.
I think I still would have responded, but not as urgent and firing. And
I said to you earlier about like it's not aggression, but it's the way I kind of like, you just grab hold of like you just go and do it, and like you're without even thinking. But maybe before you'd be a bit more like, oh, what about all my gear? Like photography gear. Like, careful, say it's not cheap at all. No. Like it's not.
I started working my way up at this point. There's lenses in there.
My question is, did you manage to recover that?
It was all fine. It was a really good camera bag.
Yeah, wicked. So you just launched it. Like, oh, that is crazy.
I was very worried. I thought I was just going to find a bag of glass, and that was going to be it for the whole holiday.
Exactly. Yeah.
But, no, I was fortunate that had survived, but it's only after, but I was still very much in that mindset. Of everything that I'd been through, I thought it doesn't really matter because it's materialistic.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like after what I'd lost, this is going to be very minuscule if I did lose it.
Yeah.
And
that is
that whole kind of like the threshold and your perspective and how it really kind of changes, because
that's the epitome
on
of
a
that.
normal day that would have broken my heart. I would have been a mess. But now my scope completely changed.
Almost like your threshold's kind of gone up, that you kind of can take on a bit more.
Things seems what would have been really big is now really small.
How interesting. So obviously going back to the time,
going forwards again.
So we've gone back to 2018. We're back in 2019. So with the therapy.
So 2019. I think it was 2020 then happened.
Oh, what
so
a
2020.
Year! What a year! What a bloody year!
Obviously. We got announced into COVID, didn't we? End of March, start of April time. I think that was then.
No, spot on. It's like I want to say 23rd. Maybe someone can
23rd of March.
Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. There we go. It's a little real there.
I remember it being somewhere around then. And my family still hadn't had this inquest. We still hadn't had the closure. We still hadn't had the end of this.
That still hadn't happened.
Oh, and by this point, I had moved out my parents' house, and I needed to. And I was really struggling to look after my mental health along with the people that I was with. I found it a lot more difficult seeing them grieving.
I think we're quite similar.
I didn't see any improvements like over that time frame. So it made it really difficult
with
for
yourself
me.
and other people.
Got to points where I was having to. This is after I moved out as well. Like I'll get a phone call 11 o'clock at night. I'm having to, peel family off my sister's grave and stuff like that. Literally like that. But it was always me that was kind of in that situation, and it made it really difficult because I'm not just grieving losing a sister; it's the pain and suffering that it's given to everyone else.
Losing a daughter to someone.
Like I find it heartbreaking seeing other people go through a heartbreak. So it made it a lot harder.
Yeah.
So we got like halfway through 2020 now, and we finally got the inquest. And I think it's actually further into 2020. I think it's more towards the end. It was quite.
So all these lockdowns.
It was. It would have been towards the end because it was when we could start seeing each other again, and there was groups inside.
It's like the tier systems we had as well.
September, November time, I think.
You had like the rule of 6 and stuff.
And the whole restaurant thing came.
Oh yeah. Oh, I helped eat out and help out was cracking. I can't lie. I was in the pub every day.
Yeah.
But sorry, back to that. So that's when.
But it was around that time, and I remember the
second one. Was it the second inquest?
So the inquest got adjourned because it was so unresolved and there was too much, and the coroner was very much, I don't like how this is. This is going to take a lot more time. There's a lot more work that needs to go into it. And then COVID happened. It really put it on the brake. So it's only until we got to that 6 people rule later in 2020 where we could actually see each other. And I went to the coroner's hearing in Maidstone. It was broadcast live for some of us because not everyone could make it because of the amount of people that was allowed inside. It wasn't within tight space.
Obviously, it wasn't public. It was obviously for like invitees.
Yeah, it was just for family. Yeah, it was a private link.
I was gonna say
just for family and stuff like that.
That's nice. Yeah.
And yeah, we were in a fortunate position where we had our own lawyers and barristers as well.
Nice, that's good. That's good
in the family. So that really did help. And
Brilliant.
I think it helped my family feel like they were doing the best that they could to get the most out of this situation, really resolve it.
Really good at it,
But even then, we got to the end of the inquest and it was a narrative. It wasn't a complete suicide. I can't believe the actual phrase that the narrative was.
Yeah.
But it was I'd already decided my own route of grief.
Like you said, I'd
already closed my book with she has committed suicide, and that's the path I'm going to take. I just want to grieve that I don't have my sister anymore.
Yeah.
But it was after this inquest where they bring up every step of the timeline. So it was I had to go through every step of my sister's journey throughout that night. Text messages at times, timestamps, when they scanned the hotel doors, what restaurants they were in. Like, it was
everything,
every single step of this journey, and people involved, and it really kind of dragged you through every event.
It kind of opened things back up a little bit at the
but
time.
it was more information than I'd heard before, because this was the full packet, because none of us knew what happened that night until
the inquest,
this final inquest.
And they got all the evidence on the table.
Yeah, and this is how it happened. This is this is now the timeline.
Yeah.
And not many people know this, and my family didn't know at the time, but after that I was signed off from my work for months.
Oh, sorry, they didn't know that.
My family will probably find this out if they watch this now.
Wow.
I was then went to my doctor.
Yeah.
This was a little time after, actually. I think it was a couple of weeks after we had the inquest. It wasn't straight away.
Yeah. So a quick question: when you got signed off, was that your choice? You went.
Yeah,
to your
this was my choice. So
worked great. Well done. That's really good.
But this is backtracking again because I haven't done it in the right order.
Absolutely fine.
The night where I realised I was not well at all.
Yeah.
Because throughout COVID, I had just coped. I'd kept myself busy and literally just done everything I could to cope. And music was one of my biggest outlets. And DIY. I loved DIY. But it got to a point where, I was seeing people and stuff like that. And I started paying attention to other people's mental health and stuff like that. And it was one particular moment at a party. My emotions, everyone left and I fell down a pit, basically. I was an absolute mess. Couldn't calm down. This is the 6 people rule, so we had 6 people over and they'd all gone home or whatever. But I remember falling down this pit, and I was very self-aware at this point. I'm really not well. I'm absolute mess. And I remember reaching out to someone at the time, just giving them a phone call, and there was 2 people on the other side of the phone at the time. And they just really kind of helped settle me, relax me. And this was 3-4 in the morning. Mm-hmm. And they calmed me to a state where I could just take myself to bed and I'd go to sleep. And they were, very much, we'll speak about this tomorrow. I think you just need to get some rest.
Okay, interesting.
Because your mindset's going to change from night to morning. It's very different.
Yeah, it honestly is. I think different at night than in the morning. Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It is very, very, very different.
Yeah.
They said, you can have a better understanding of, how you're feeling in the morning. So I always had my counselling in the mornings for those reasons, not later in the day.
Oh, wow. That's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was a very different mindset to later in the day. It was kind of, you've got to get up and go, before you got too much time to think about it.
Yeah.
So there's nothing to stop me from going, and I've got to wake up. Counselling's there straight away.
And
I don't have a choice. Fresh. Yeah, it's first thing.
Yeah.
So I'd spoken to them in the morning, and it was at that point I was like, right, now I'm going to phone my doctor, and say, you know, I need help. And I remember it was quite vivid. My doctor's not the best, and he's very much always been the same response, which is, what do you want me to do about it? I was like, I need some more help.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really struggling, and I'm really reaching out to you. And he's like, well, you know, how are you feeling? What is it that you're struggling with? And, you know, like, I had to push at this point, and I was like, look, this is how I'm feeling. This is how I'm struggling. Like, I'm struggling to feed myself. I'm struggling to operate a day-to-day life. Like, I can't function a normal.
It's almost like a dismissive of you as well, and the fact that you're not functioning. You can't do this, and it's
like,
just
I've now dismissed looking after myself. I've dismissed caring for myself at this point, because your mental state is
so
and you feel so tired and so burnt out because of how much your brain's trying to process. You know, it's like overclocking a PC or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're really burning as hot as you can.
Too much,
using everything at full whack. It's going to burn out. And at that point, that's when he diagnosed me with depression, put me on sertraline.
Yes.
Anxiety and depression. Like, that's when I was put on sertraline at that point. He said, we're going to put you on this, and then you'll pick him up from the pharmacy. And that was kind of the end of the conversation. And I was like,
okay.
He's hung up, and I thought, I don't know anything about this medication. I don't know how I'm meant to take it. I don't know how I'm meant to start it, the effects and stuff like that. And I'm very curious to the effects that medication have.
Yeah,
and stuff 100%. Like that, and how you're meant to take it.
What was it like taking it? If I'm asking, sertraline,
So at first, I was very dizzy with it at first, like nauseous and stuff like that. And I often found that if I'd missed one, I was very nauseous.
Wow, interesting.
That was the biggest side effect. I've come back off them now because it started giving me other physical side effects that weren't in my favour, and I was like, I need to come off them.
Yeah, that's fair
and I've done that pace, but I didn't do it properly. I didn't speak to the doctors about it. I've just done it myself. Yeah.
It affects your body in different ways.
It does. It's very different for different people, and I thought at the time, I thought I'm in a position where I feel like I'm going to ease myself off them again.
Good,
because I don't feel so vulnerable.
Good, yeah. It was good if it helped you.
I was very lucky at that time, though, that my work had private healthcare.
Oh, brilliant.
So it was so good, and it was the most organised healthcare I'd ever seen. So
so good.
For me in the state as well, something being easy made it so much easier.
Yeah.
Because when you're trying to get help with mental health,
it's a hard thing already.
It is very difficult. It's so much easier when it's easier to access.
Yeah, I cannot agree more. And it needs to be easy access.
And that was a big deal for me. So the fact that this was an app, literally just put your information on, you're in, pick a doctor, okay, pick the doctor. No way,
it's literally as easy as that.
What's it about? And then you pick what it's about, and then you pick your time slot.
And then that's it, you're booked in.
And then booked in.
Bang, you have just turn up
right,
and
this
go.
person's going to phone you at this time. And they did, and the doctor said, right, okay, so what do you want to speak about? And I said, well, my doctor's medicated me. I'm really struggling at the moment. And I explained my lifestyle at that point. And she said, well, we need to sign you off. You need a break from work. Because my doctor hadn't done this at this point.
Classic, yeah.
And, so they signed me off, and they managed to do that over the app as well. They send you the certificate. I was like,
what?
This is ridiculous.
That's
it just comes up in the app.
And then just got this
letter. Then I just forwarded it on email, and it was done. Like, I really didn't have to worry about picking up anything or an email chain coming through. It was just instant.
Is that service still available? Because it'd be quite cool to plug if people needed it. That's all. No reason. No problem if you can't.
I don't know whether I can plug it, because I don't know how easy it is for you to buy, but mine was through work.
Sorry, this is the private through work, wasn't it?
But it was because it's through work, so I don't know whether it's something that you can actually purchase and pay for. And I think it would definitely be worth it if you can.
It's just if you know
this health service. I'll look into it and try and find out.
You said it to me, and it'd just be handy if someone.
But they were really good, and then they said, well, what we're going to do then is we're going to give you another counsellor, because I'd already had the counselling. They said, we're going to give you another counsellor.
That's the one with like a bit. You said it was numbers and that
counsellor. But this was very different. Like, we're going to give you a counsellor, but this one's going to be over the phone. Yeah. And same thing again, done it early in the morning.
Yeah.
And go for that counselling. I think I had 9 sessions that time, but that's where I had that awareness before. In the previous counselling, it's like how much difference it makes just speaking to a friend, because a lot of it was like that.
Yeah, just speak
to someone else about it.
Yeah.
Because they can give you a different perspective on it. And you're getting it out, like it's the going back to the start, just saying it.
Can I share something with that as well?
Yeah.
So in terms of talking to someone about something, I do it with Cam actually quite a lot. My friend who's obviously Kev's son, one of my best friends, and like I can't remember this. It's actually a thing. It's this sort of psychology thing where like the most I've ever spoke to him deeply is sat in a car, and the reason being, like you might do it yourself when you sat in a car and you really do share yourself quite a lot. It's because you're not having to look at each other.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah.
It's something like the shoulder to shoulder something where like you're not having. It doesn't feel as confrontational talking about your feelings. So which I really like.
Yeah.
So I've had the deepest chats in the car.
I can relate because a lot of the time as well, like I can struggle to voice my emotions and stuff like that. I struggle to say it vocally. I find it easier to write things down.
On a text or something?
Yeah.
Even?
So I've always been someone like I've not necessarily been able to vocalize my emotions verbally, but I can text it and you know I can see it in writing. I just find that easier because everyone's different.
And you won't choke up as well.
Yeah. And you can see what you've said.
Yeah.
And you can try and like make it make more sense once it's written and stuff like that. Like you can.
It's got like more cohesive. That's the words. It's just makes more sense.
I feel like you've got a visual response then, and then you can actually see. You know, you can actually because a lot of time when you speak, you don't listen back to yourself. When you're texting, you can see back of what you've said. I think that's a big difference as well.
Spot on.
So for a lot of people, like speaking for emotions might be easier just over the message, not necessarily in person.
No, exactly. Yeah. So with the timeline again. Sorry.
Yeah. So by this point, we'd had the inquest and we'd reached different points of closure in my family, stuff like that, and I had that counselling, and then that lasted for a couple of months. Signed off for a couple of months, and then I did return to work. And then I think I'd gone back to work, and this is still COVID as well. And it was kind of one of those like life choices as well. And I was like, I'd really throw myself into work, and that's quite normal. Like when you're grieving and people go through their emotions, I often find that to throw yourself into something. It's kind of like a coping mechanism.
It is in a way.
And for me, when I was at work, I wanted to just try and, work my way up as hard as I could. But
to get through,
I wasn't getting somewhere, and I really need something to lock onto to help me still function
with
and
it.
Not fall back to not looking after myself.
I
wanted
to,
I was all for growth, not shutting myself down. I didn't want to get trapped in that.
You wanted just to propel yourself forward as much as you can.
As much as I find like routine's really helpful for mental health, doing the same thing and not having that growth made me struggle.
It gets a bit like monotonous and like you're just in the same thing.
So I needed something, so I took unpaid leave and went to college and studied to do electrics, and that was something that kept me going.
I didn't know.
I took that leap and was like, I'm gonna stop. I know I had a house at the time and stuff like that.
Oh wow! So you to take unpaid leave? And like that's crazy.
I really had to take the jump, and I was in a fortunate position that I could. But that doing that completely changed my life, and I'd met like all different people
from doing that course. No way.
Like it really kind of started a chain reaction stuff like that, and
how funny, but
completely changed my mindset, and the job that I had off the back of that was probably one of the best jobs I'd ever had as well. Like the people that I was working with were absolutely brilliant, and that helped. No fault to the people that I was working with before. They're all not great guys, but it was a very different lifestyle going into that, and then it's very much building site, and I'm so mentally aware of other people, and I can see like mental health is actually really big on construction sites. They really push it.
So actually, like the whole leadership and everyone pushes it onto
like on a construction site, because they're very individual people. It's not like a communal, everyone's working together like you would in a normal workforce.
How interesting.
Like you don't have like a staff meeting everyone goes to it. You've got loads of different people on a site that come in and out, but a lot of the biggest campaigns that you see on work sites it's mental health.
It's all that,
because unfortunately is that statistically a lot of it is men, and then predominantly a lot of men are in construction, stuff like that, and a lot of people can struggle with that lifestyle, which is why they really push for it.
I didn't know they pushed it though.
They really pushed stuff like that, and it was actually reassuring to see that this was being pushed and it was in place.
So nice. Oh my. Yeah, not to be stereotypical at all, because I imagine like people with construction sites are like the geezers.
Yeah,
like,
and it's not like that.
it's not like that at all, is it?
And there's there's this
Just
very.
please tell me, yeah.
It's a very kind of, what would you say, false image.
Yeah, I'm
If
glad
you know
it
what I
is.
mean, you
I'm
know,
really
like-
glad that's it.
It's the whole bringing men's emotions to light and stuff like that, isn't
Yeah.
it? And
That's so refreshing to hear that.
yeah, like there's this false image of like men can't cry. You're on a construction site. Emotions aren't real and stuff like that. And it's actually very different.
Wow, and you feel that.
And like people are very
Yeah.
caring for other people's mental health and stuff like that. And
How interesting.
it was so aware of how we were working. That, even if you're having, because I've got a dark sense of humour.
Yeah, I do as well.
A lot of the people that I work with as well do. But
I'm
like
not
some
incredibly
of the
bad.
some of the jokes were a bit touching.
If I did my real sense of humour, this whole podcast would have been cancelled by
Oh
now.
yeah, it's the same for me. This
It'd
would
be
have been
gone.
really cut down. But yeah, like even some of that was a bit touch and go.
Yeah,
But what I liked was, like some of the sense of humour that's been chucked about. Like it is very dark, but people were like, it was still very well. Like, just be careful. Like you don't want to actually upset them.
Oh yeah,
And like it was actually really like it's not the type of place I expected to see something like that.
Yeah, well, like you said, because I had a
yeah.
stereotype which is clearly completely wrong, which I'm really happy about.
Yeah,
Like so happy about.
Like, there was one guy that we had a really good joke, but it's almost like we was bullying each other. So it did get a bit far when I screwed his shoes to the ceiling on a construction site, but the ceiling was about 30 feet up. So you had to get the biggest pair of steps out to unscrew his shoes.
Oh my god!
But anyway, at the end of the day, we're all packing up to go home, and he was going, "Where's my shoes?"
You're
And
like,
he's stood in there ages. I just can't find them. And he's looked up, and obviously it's a long way up, and he's just seen them screwed into the ceiling.
it's in two boots.
And I've gone, "Catch you later, mate." And they were like, "No, Nick, you're gonna have to go take them down." I was like, I know.
Please tell
I'm
me.
gonna go take them down.
Please tell me you got you back. Please tell me you got
he
you
did.
back.
Um,
Up in the sky.
he started writing "I fancy Steph" on his shirt and wearing it around site. Just stuff like that. Just trying to like it was.
Which
But,
against Nick's sisters, you know.
situations like that. But like some of our humour went a bit further than that. But that's when they started going, "Look, Nick, like just check that he's all right." And I did.
Yeah.
Like I did like go back out to him afterwards, go, "Look, I want you to know that I'm just having a joke with you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want." Because you still got to be aware of other people's emotions.
And was he
stuff
all
like
right?
that.
Like,
yeah,
genuinely? Well, of course
But
he would. But you got to check.
But I feel like if I didn't check, I would have had that worry. And say something had happened, and me not having.
Oh god, that'd been awful, wouldn't it?
And the last thought would have been, I hope you didn't see it.
Yeah.
And it's where my awareness for other people starts coming back
That's
into it again.
so good to have, though. It's good to have banter, like
Yeah.
you say, but
yeah.
But it's also good to be on
just,
different.
just check in on them at the same
Are
time.
you actually all right? Yeah.
Because sometimes you
Yeah.
don't know how far is too far for some people.
This is the conclusion, guys. We've kind of spoken a lot. We've spoken a lot. This is gonna be
This is
2 parts at least. But it's good. I've loved it, Nick. Honestly. But just in conclusion, obviously, I think this whole episode's been quite centered around like suicide awareness as well, which is what we want to drill down with. Just to round things up, is there anything that you kind of want to like tell the audience, or tell me even, with your own experiences with what you've been through, sort of thing? Is there anything, if you could look back, I always say as well, you don't have to follow this, but if you could kind of tell yourself something, maybe, what do you reckon? Where do you want to go really with it?
I think one of the biggest things that I was thinking of,
Yeah.
like when I was going through experiencing, losing Connor,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
brother, and my sister Kaylee.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that I often thought was that you never know what someone else is going through.
Oh,
like
100%.
no idea. Even if they were to kind of tell you, first of all, I'm fine.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily know how they're feeling, or
Oh,
like
100%.
when I first started, going through the first stages of grief and stuff like that. It was often one of the first things on my mind was like walking past people on the high street and thinking, you don't know what they're going through, you don't know what they're going through.
Oh, yeah.
And it really kind of brought me onto the subject was that I don't think there's any reason to mistreat another person.
Yeah.
I don't think there's ever an excuse for it.
Ever. Yeah.
Because I've heard people say, oh yeah, but they're going through this, they're going through that. And now I've got to a point now I turn around and go, I've been through this, and I've never seen a moment where I thought this is excusable.
Yes,
I'm going to treat you awfully because of what I've been through. No,
never ever.
It should be the opposite.
And the other flip side as well of like when you see people that are being like a bit hostile to you, sometimes it's not just because they're not just sometimes a bad person.
No,
it's their coping mechanism because they're so.
You don't understand what they're going through either.
Know. Exactly.
Yeah, there must be more going on.
Exactly.
Because you don't understand why they're behaving that way.
100%. That's such a good point.
Yeah.
And as well on that topic as well, I've noticed with podcast people that people come on and message me and said like, "Oh, can I come on and talk about mental health and stuff?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And they tell me some stuff. I'm like, "Whoa, I never would have guessed that at all." You're spot on, Nick. You can't. So like, for like advice for people that have kind of gone through this sort of thing, it's kind of like you said, never judge, never like always check on them and stuff.
Like you should never, just try and guess how someone else is feeling or something like that. Like you can never assume how someone is feeling at all.
Yeah.
You can't do things like that. And like I always think that it very much gave me the perspective of, if this was the last time that you could have spoke to them, do you really want to leave it that way?
Oh, that's a good way. That's a really good way.
So like I really started thinking like that. Like let's say if you just had an argument with someone, or say if that's the last time you spoke to them, that is your last conversation that you're ever going to have with them.
Eat your way.
Is that how you want to leave it, or is that going to be your last conversation that you have with them? Or if someone is upset or they're having a difficult time, the last thing that you say to them is going to be the last thing that you remember saying to them. I think that makes a difference. To
it always tricks you to be a nicer person.
Yeah.
In a way as well. Yeah. That's really nice. So, okay, I think we've spoke quite a bit now, haven't we?
We're about a week in now.
Week in, yeah. I'm getting grey hairs, and the camera's also dying very quick on us, so we better wrap it up. So, Nick, obviously, I've said about the playlist in many different episodes. I'm not going to repeat it again. We know what it's about. But the Conn'Cast playlist, Nick has an entry into the playlist. Do you want to tell everyone? Yeah.
I did really struggle to decide on a song, but one that kind of stood out to me was "Shine On You Crazy Diamond" by Pink Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
I've always loved Pink Floyd.
Yes.
No doubt about that. David Gilmour is probably my all-time favourite guitarist.
What a man, yeah.
If not, he's in the top 3 at least. But I've always loved "Shine On You Crazy Diamond."
Yeah.
I've always found his guitar playing very emotional. But it took on a new meaning after I'd lost Kaylee and Connor and people like that, and it really changed how I listened to music and stuff like that. So now the song has a different meaning to me. I feel like that's definitely the one to go for.
And you said obviously it's a long song, but there's a short one if you want to. But also you said there wasn't many lyrics in it, but it was quite it was quite poignant.
Yeah, I think because of his guitar style, and he tries to portray his emotion in a solo as opposed to the lyrics.
Yeah,
it's kind of got that balance.
That's nice. Yeah. I hope you guys, watching or listening, look at it, and hopefully it's, you kind of can, I don't know, get a bit of, I don't know, just kind of relate to it in a way, or just get a bit of it. But hopefully you guys enjoy it. And that is the end of the episode, or the part 2, or the part 3.
I don't know what part we're on.
We don't know which part we're all week in, as Nick said. So, this has been your host, Finn Tumber, and this has been...
Nick. Thank you for having me. I really didn't know what to do then. That's how
I always said, do I say your name or do you say it? But this way you do it. But anyway, this has been us, and we'll probably see you again next week for another episode with Nick again. But no, we'll see you on Sunday at 7 p.m. next week, and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Farewell.